Oh, Fallout 76. Like it or hate it, it seems that the Wastelanders update, along with its release on Steam, brought with it a new surge of players, possibly even more with the even more recent free-to-play weekend and discount. And while I can't exactly say that I had the time of my life during the game's first initial release without NPCs, I can say that the core of the gameplay, that is, shooting monstrosities into a bloody pulp, looting everything in sight like a baby playing in a ball pit, or choosing different perks until I have exactly the kind of character that I want, was more or less there. The difference this time is I had a friend or two along with the ride.
Well, I killed a couple ghouls upstairs. I don't know if you got anything for it or not. Should be some bodies upstairs. Good for crystal and fuel and stuff, even if you don't make the grenades out of them. It's frozen in air for me.
Yep.
I do hope you're both being cautious as you do your exploring.
What were they doing? Emerson, tell me. What did you know about Dr. Bernard's deep sleeper pods? Have you got something for me? Emerson, tell me.
It was a biomedical thing with Arctos.
Oh, who am I kidding? The bugs were just awful, and unfortunately, they still are. It always just seems that when something gets fixed, another issue comes up. I know that's the case in every game, but these aren't minor bugs either. Not when Bethesda has to keep disabling certain parts of the game just to prevent further issues until it's fixed, and then just to have them break again. In the end though, at least for me, it was still Fallout, if not a tainted one. I guess you can call me a glutton for punishment, but I guess that I always liked the previous game so much that I decided to just put up with it. If I wanted to play Fallout with others, it was this, or nothing. But the lack of real NPCs to drive a story forward that was worth caring about made the game feel so soulless, both literally and figuratively. At least until Wastelanders came. Oh my god, it's a human being! It's a fucking human being! Oh my god.
I was gonna say, I stopped, I was like, do you hear something? Cause I'm freaking the out. Like somebody's talking to me right now, bro.
But I'm not here to talk about the issues. This is about the one Wasteland update. And while I'm excited for it, at the same time, I'm also worried. If you're a new player, you probably came across one huge issue at some point or another. Enemies suddenly becoming a much higher level than you, when they weren't earlier. That's because the game bases the enemy's level to the highest level player in the area. And this also means that places you've been to before will suddenly become more difficult or just impossible. Or at least not without the help of others. But unless you group up with them, something that's not always possible or you'd be inclined to do, this means they're also probably going to be killing those enemies quicker. Which means, yeah, sorry pal, no loot or XP for you. On the other hand, this also means higher level players have less incentive to go to the earlier parts of the map, since enemies and events will give rewards that just suck in comparison, and just not worth your time. This is an issue, considering the game gets updates in all areas of the game, and the beginner zone pretty much counts for almost 1/3 of the entire map. Granted, since Wastelanders came out, the scaling does seem to have gotten better. For one, enemies and all the new interiors related to the new content all seem to scale to the player's level, or at least the content that I've played so far. But anywhere outdoors, it just seems that anything goes. In fact, I'm pretty sure the map that I just showed isn't even accurate anymore. This has been a problem with the game since its release, but considering Bethesda is well known for their games having some form of level scaling, I'm not exactly sure why this feature wasn't in the game from the beginning. This being Bethesda's first try at a multiplayer game is really the only reason I can think of, and perhaps they couldn't get it right this time. But whatever the reason is, Bethesda hopefully plans to address this issue this upcoming fall, and I'm looking at this statement right here. Now, if you're unfamiliar with level scaling in games, this means that enemies will always scale to your level, making sure that enemies will always stay challenging and no fight is ever too trivial or too taxing, but more importantly, scale up the rewards. And this allows for the entire map to be viable regardless of their level, and anyone to play together regardless of the level gap between them. Now, in my opinion, this isn't really needed in games such as Diablo or even Dragon Age, where the player is constantly moving from one area to the next, and they never go back, at least not usually. But in an open world game like this, with little to no boundaries, this kind of makes level scaling all the more important to have, lest you force the player down the same path every time they play the game, or make a new character, due to getting their ass kicked just because they ventured off to an area that they weren't supposed to yet. Now you may be saying, well, it's simple, just stay away from those parts of the game until you're ready, otherwise there's no sense of progression. And yeah, I get it. Not everyone likes level scaling because it does remove that, but to me, that still removes any reason to even tout the game as offering the player any sense of freedom. Something that Bethesda is very well known for promoting their games as having. One Wasteland is derived from ESO's One Tamriel, an update that was well known to have boosted the game's player base, and I guess you could say, probably saved it. And this is where I start to get a little worried. All in all, while I do think the One Tamriel update was a good thing for the game as a whole, at the same time, it made me realize that I didn't feel like I was actually progressing anymore. At least, not until you reach veteran status. And this is coming from someone who actually likes level scaling. Now, to an extent, I know that's not true. If you didn't keep your gear up to par, you would notice that enemies would become more difficult to beat the higher you got. But ESO pretty much threw gear at you, making you feel like a kid at a candy store that gave away free samples. So it wasn't exactly that hard, and from my experience, the difficulty pretty much remained static throughout, at least before you became veteran. And in the end, I guess that was probably the goal, but the difficulty could have been bumped up a little higher in my opinion, and not just save the higher difficulty for the bosses. As a result, I pretty much stopped playing ESO the minute I actually hit veteran. But for what it's worth, I don't think the level scaling that ESO currently has isn't that big of an issue, considering the size of the world and its redonkulous amount of quests. But if the same mechanic of enemies being exactly the same level as your character makes it into Fallout 76, and given the wording on the recent roadmap reveal, it leaves me a bit worried about how it's going to be designed. 76's world is much smaller to ESO's, even when ESO first came out, or even compared to other MMOs. That's largely due to the fact that Fallout 76 is not a traditional MMO, at least not in scale. Instead of a world consisting of one-off events and quests that can span across multiple continents, instead you got a smaller world but more dense, with content meant to be repeated. This makes it all the more important that the game keeps what little world there is viable to the player however long they've played. After all, there is no hard max level cap. The player can still continue to get perks and rearrange their special points, as well as an upcoming legendary perk system, both which encourages playing the same character way beyond the game's soft level cap of 50. But like I said before, I'm also hoping that the game doesn't eliminate a feeling of progression entirely. If enemies are going to be following your level to the last digit, that's what might actually happen. Right now, the game has a predetermined level range that it recommends the player to be before venturing there, but it will also never go any higher than the range it's set to, even if the player is well beyond it. If players are within the range, it's anyone's guess as to what level it picks. But an alternative to a strict one-to-one system would be for the enemies to always be 10 or so levels below and above you, anywhere, wherever you go, making the system base its level on the player, not on physical location. While technically this is what One Wasteland is already going to do, if your level does in fact mean your exact level, then this eliminates all sense of progression altogether. Having a level range that follows you wherever you go, at least to me, would still allow for a level scaling system to do its job, while at the same time also keeping the feeling of progression intact. At any given moment, you'll have no idea if an enemy will ever be weaker or stronger than you, but be rest assured, never so strong that they become way out of your league. And when the enemy is weaker, it won't invalidate your efforts of working so hard to get that weapon you always wanted, so you can see the heads roll when you deserve it. It's not like Bethesda hasn't used a system like this before. To the best of my memory, Fallout 4 actually had something like this. The only difference is that certain enemy types, such as mole rats, would cap at a certain level. After all, it is just a mole rat. God forbid you should have to spend entire clips on a single mole rat just to kill it. That's something I'm pretty sure no one wants. Cannon fodder should really just be cannon fodder. So will Bethesda actually do this? I honestly have no idea. I just hope that they realize that Fallout is an entirely different animal in terms of its real-time combat and RPG mechanics, and that they just can't loosely apply the same logic of one Tamriel to one Wasteland. While games like ESO have many different skills and attacks at your disposal, the vast majority of skills in Fallout are just passive, while the actual combat is shoot, shoot, strafe, reload, shoot some more, with the occasional VATS. Not that that's really a bad thing, but that does mean they are two very different games. On the other hand, I could be worrying about nothing. Maybe Fallout's faster TTK, as well as hordes of enemies that you sometimes face, may make the system not as bad as I think. I guess only time will tell. But anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, drop me a like. Hope to see you all in the next one.